Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Happy Bringling. Welcome to our another show today on Design Your Unicorn. And we have a very eminent personality today, Pooja Bhatia, who is based out of United States today, but is an Indian and is truly an Indian and wants to do something for India. I would like to, kind of request, give a little background about what she is working upon. And it's a very interesting field because when we work as an entrepreneur, there are two areas which becomes kind of totally neglected or we kind of get stuck out there. One is technology. What kind of technology you should be adopting? How you could create a very good patented or IP for your business operations, and not only that, she also supports in protecting that IP. What all things you can do to ensure to build a strong intellectual property for your organization and also to protect it. If there is any requirement with respect to technology transfer to some other organization with respect to licensing or getting it developed from universities, that's where she helps. So I think I may not be able to do the exact entire justice with respect to the work what she does. So I would like to welcome Pooja Bhatia here and would request her to kind of introduce a little bit about herself and the great work which she is doing.
Thank you so much, Anshuv. It's a pleasure to be here. And thanks for this opportunity to, speak about and share my experience. Because as you have rightly quoted, that most of the startups, entrepreneurs, and even the researchers, when they start working on anything new, they forget about IP, which is a very crucial part of it. So my journey starts being a student in IP. I was trained as a, women scientist by under the TIFAC DST scheme for women scientists in IP, and that was back in 2006 when IP was still fresh in India. People were just talking about it. They were not even aware completely on what it is, how it is going to help them. So from 2006 to date, there is a lot of change in the attitude, I would say, and that has helped me throughout the career, uh, bringing in a lot of insights on how startups, innovators, and researchers feel and think about IP. I have been in this field for last 15 years, helping innovators in protecting their IP, getting their technologies out to the market, helping them in finding the right partners for licensing their technology. So this is a bit about me. I would also like to share that I have internationally recognized credentials, which are registered tech transfer professional, a certified licensing professional, and I'm also a registered patent agent with the Indian Patent Office. So with these three credentials, it really helps when you are dealing with any of the other colleagues, because it gives you a sense of belonging. So people connect easily with you. So whoever wants to get into this field, or whoever is, working with any of the professionals, be sure to check if they have any of these, credentials with them, because it gives you a trust, a confidence that, they are internationally recognized, they are holding such credentials. So definitely they are bringing in some value for you. So that's about me. I would leave the stage to you now.
Thank you so much, Pooja, for such a detailed explanation. I would also want to know that, what is about the education which you did, which is kind of helping you to work on this specific area of work. So what is the academic qualification which kind of helps you out, which could support you not only in just legal technology and the technology transfer part?
So, Anshiv, I have a combination of technical and MBA degree. So, I did my master's in biotechnology from University of Rajasthan, and then I have done my master's in business administration from National Law University, Jodhpur. So, both of these are, you know, quite different domains. But for technology transfer and any innovation management, you need both of them, because you need to know the technical aspect, you need to know how to strategize, how to market your technologies. And that is wherein, the MBA really helps. It gives you the jargon that is required, it gives you a feel of different strategies that can be adopted. So both of these have helped me over the period of time. I have worked on, getting more, doing more courses and getting myself educated on different aspects of IP. These are more of certification courses that I have done. And as I told you about the credentials, both of these, so RTPP is more of an experience based certification where there you have to show that you have particular number of experience and you have done certain cases and highlight your skills to get that certification. While for certified licensing professional, you have to sit for an exam and your knowledge is tested that way. So both of these are skill oriented, experience oriented, knowledge oriented credentials which are there. Same as with the patent agent exam as well. You need to know the act to be in a position to clear the exam.
Okay, I think that's brilliant. Thanks, Pooja. Now, another thing you just mentioned about marketing, and that gives me leads to me another question. Is there any kind of specific software or a hardware which is probably can be used from a marketing angle? From this technology transfer perspective, or have you come across some patents or some technologies which are kind of very unique when it comes to marketing?
So I would address the first part of it. Yes, there are tools and databases which one can use for marketing the technologies. You need to do the market research first. So you need to have access to the market research databases. You also need to have access to all the relevant patent databases and non-patent literature databases to be in a position to do the searches. Because once you start marketing a technology, you need to know both the upstream and downstream of it. So when I say upstream and downstream, that means you need to know the background. What is it that has happened and what is it that you are trying to create? That same principle applies for entrepreneurship also, right?
Right.
Where you have to know what was there in the past and what is the difference that you are going to create. So when you are marketing a technology, that is the key. You need to know what is the difference you are going to create. Then only you can capture the attention of the licensee. Um, Now, when we do that, I definitely do need to show what is the deficiency or lacuna in the previous patents that have been filed or the publications or technologies that are already existing. So yes, I do often quote others' patents to highlight or bring the advantages in the client's technology to be in a position to transfer it.
That's amazing. Uh, See, I've been an edtech entrepreneur for last almost 4 5 years now. What I would like to know from you is that typically what you have seen, how which area or which industry has the maximum patents which is available. You talked about market research, so I'm sure you would have done some kind of a research or work on that. So what do you think that which area is generally has seen most of the IPs coming in into the to the department for approval or for things like that? And also how many of them have, or which one has the maximum percentage as a success rate out there?
That is a tricky question because there are a lot of applications that are filed, but the number of grant rate is still low. So if you compare India to China, definitely the numbers are quite different. Everything you would find patent applications on everything in China, while in India, because of certain sections, the number of applications that are filed. For example, if you look at software per se is not patentable in India. So the number of applications filed in that domain are still low. So when I would give you a difference between the global and the Indian scenario as well. So when you talk about the Indian scenario, you will find more applications in chemical or mechanical field, specifically with devices. But if you look at the global scenario, you will find more applications in life sciences areas or healthcare, because in US and Europe it is still uh, easy to file an application and get one, even though Europe also has a similar system like India of exceptions, and they would not allow certain healthcare innovations to be granted. So coming back to your question, that what kind of inventions we usually used to get is mainly related to chemical and mechanical, And for chemical and mechanical, the rate is, the grant rate is also good, provided they meet the three criteria.
Okay. So I think heard what I heard about is that chemical and mechanical is basically are the leading patent grants as well as the number of applications in India. But when it comes to US and Europe, it is more about life sciences. Am I right, Pooja?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Now, I mean, as I said, I'm an edtech entrepreneur and myself, and I'm very, very fascinated towards education and employment. Have you seen some kind of a patents coming in an education segment? And I generally see it's a very tricky field. While there are, I would say more than 50% of entrepreneurs would be working on education sector one way or the other, but there are very less patents or less copyrights which are coming in into this sector per se. What is the reason, do you think, for the same?
So the number of patents or copyrights, filed for edutech are generally less because the scope of protection is not very large. Now, if you look at a platform, at a edutech platform, uh, there isn't much technology innovation. There could be, innovation in the way the entire program is delivered. But again, that would not fall under the purview of a patent because a patent is only going to protect the technology. So if you have something which is absolutely new, is not software related, even if it is software related, connected to a hardware, then only it will be patentable in India. So these are the reasons, one of the reasons why many people don't go in for a patent application. Two, most people are not aware of it, that you can go ahead and file an application. At least file an application and see. Some of the people don't even know if there's an innovation within their system. So they need to be first be aware of that, there are other forms of IP as well which can be used, like trademark. They can use designs, they can also use copyrights, as you said, for protecting their platform or the content even which they are floating on the platform. So most of them are not even aware that these kind of things can be done. They only believe that by putting C with the date, the copyright notification would help. No, but if you have to enforce it against anyone, you need to have a registered copyright. So yes, answering your question, the number are less mainly because of the scope of protection which is there, and the lack of awareness among people that they can go ahead and file such applications.
Okay. So, so one is the awareness which you're mentioning about it, and second is you're mentioning about the scope of things getting patented. I mean, it may not. I might have asked this question for an edutech sector, but frankly, what you mentioned to me is mostly the patents comes in India from chemical and mechanical fields. Now, apparently, I've done a chemical engineering, but I don't have a patent on that. So. But the other point, what I see is I was actually interviewing one of the successful entrepreneur in US. He's based out of Canada actually, and he has got a patent in the education sector based on just a AI algorithm which he had kind of initiated. And that's where I think you are saying that in US there is a possibility of patenting a software, while in India there is not a possibility of patenting a software. Am I right?
Right. And since most of the ventures in edutech would be based in India, I'm presuming. So for the Indian companies, going and filing a patent or any form of IP in US would not help them. So that is why you would see a screwed level or numbers when you look at compare India and US. Now, even in US, most of the softwares would be stuck because of the case laws. There are a number of case laws which establish that how and when the software can be patented. So that again would influence the number of software applications. Now, when I talk about number of software applications, if you look just at filing, it's easy, right? You just go and file something. But
Right.
that is not the end of it. You need to have a granted patent to be in a position to enforce it, to use it against any of the infringers, or even raise any funding. Even though you may have a patent application, but only when it is granted, it has some value.
Absolutely right. And one more question which I wanted to understand. how can we, generate this awareness about protecting their things, if not as a patent but as a copyright or a trademark? Because I really feel that entrepreneurs have, there is a very less awareness with respect when it comes to entrepreneurs and business owners, that how they can protect their even trademarks, the names, and small things, like their content and the way they work as a process, that also can be copyrighted, at least if not patented. So how we can generate, raise that awareness? One. Second, is it the only awareness which is a problem, or is it also the availability of the right kind of guidance is also a problem in terms of filing these IP protection rights claims?
Anja, for the I think how to resolve the awareness issue was one of the main points when Innovation Technology Transfer Office was created, that we thought we would like to solve it. So we have, you would be happy to know, we have done more than 100 webinars for IP with the startups, with academic institutions, for the startups, for the academic institutions, and individual innovators as well, telling them that, IP is a portfolio of different forms. You just don't have to put all eggs in one particular basket. You can have variety of, baskets, and you can choose what form of IP you would like to do. In fact, a single product can also have multiple IPs, which will give you a strength. So we have been trying to educate people about it, trying to advise them on what are the best strategies to protect their inventions or their products with or processes with. What are the things they need to implement within their company or setup to ensure that none of the IP escapes out. Because most of the time there are no set frameworks, so the companies lose out the inventions or the IP. Even in academic institutions, if there is no proper policy framework, most of the IP unknowingly goes out. Now I'll give you an example where two inventors from an institution are working, and they are not aware that they should not file an application in their own name, rather in the name of the institute, because they have used all the resources of the institute, they are employed with the institute. So all these factors can be taken care of when there are clear cut policy framework. So this policy framework is not just essential for an academic institution, obviously, which is frequently filing, but also for a startup. Because um, when you are working with a team, especially now in a remote situation, you need to make your employees or your team members aware that there are certain policy framework that is to be followed, how you have to showcase your brand, what are the exact way it has to be written. You would see people don't use the logos correctly. uh, like even in our case, people would misspell ITTO. So I keep try prompting them, no, this is the way it is written. So some of them do get irritated, but it's okay. I have to ensure that the branding is done well. So that is something also that the entrepreneurs need to know. They have to ensure that their brand is well reflected in a way that they intend to. So they need to have a framework that for that as well. Um, Now, when we talk about giving the right guidance, there are resources which are available for guidance, but many people are not aware of it. That they have such support system. Now, if I ask you how many people in India would know that there is a website for startups by Invest India, which does give you a lot of information. It gives you information about the startup facilitators as well. Most of them would not know that. Um, or if I ask them what is the full form of DIPP,
They
uh,
will not.
they will not know. They will say, "What is it?"
Absolutely.
So there are resources. It is more about getting to know that what is all available. I think that once one becomes an entrepreneur, we also need to check out, other than working on their own idea, what are the other resources that they will need and how they can access it, which is possible by creating networks. The more you talk to other startups, founders, other entrepreneurs, you will get to know more.
Great. So one more interesting point you just touched about it, and I think I really liking this conversation because you're talking about not just about the IP part of it. You're talking about technology. You're talking about branding, marketing, and one more aspect you touched upon, which is the most important and most touchy topic for entrepreneurs, is funding. Now you mentioned that that these IPs really help to raise funds as well. Now, considering that there is a limitation, or maybe maybe because of awareness or because of the limitation of the patent laws in India, the patents are not there much available right now, which are kind of there. Now, what do you think that apart from patents, let's say the copyrights, the trademarks, how that can help an entrepreneur to raise funding, or it can that be really used to raise funding?
So I think you can correct me, Anshu, at any point because you are an entrepreneur yourself, so and an investor too. So you can bring in a different perspective. So
Sure.
when I think about funding for entrepreneurs using IP, I feel that it is very crucial for them to have a portfolio. Even if you don't have a patent, you should at least have a brand, a logo, some trademarks for your products, which would add on value to your to the entire startup. So now, if you look at the trademarks, or why are they actually essential for a startup? How are they bringing in value? They are something that if you later on transfer the product along with the trademark would get you fetch you a separate value for the trademark. So when you also talk about in terms of funding, it gives a sense of assurance to the investor. I feel that they have thought about what all IP can be involved. So if you look at the IP portfolio, it is not just trademark, you can also have copyrights and designs. So all of these are useful in raising the funds. In most of the edutech ventures that I have seen, most of them do have copyrights for the content, or they have contents which is completely different. The platform is very good, very useful. Even that is your IP, right? Even if it is not protected, that platform is your IP. It is something which has a lot of know-how, lot of trade secrets associated with it. So those kind of things also add on to the value and help you with the funding part. So now let me, put up this question to you. As an investor, how do you think about it? Because you have been in those different roles. So how would you answer this question?
So frankly, now I feel like I'm getting interviewed now. But yeah, it's a very good question, and I would like to answer this. See, the reason why I've asked this question is because I've been at the both sides of the table. Okay, I've been an entrepreneur, and I'm raising funds for my own startup, which is a patent pending startup, and that's what I was talking about. A lot of questions from an edtech perspective. And on the other side, when I deal with startups who have some great innovative technologies, but they have not even forget about the patent, they have not even thought about copywriting their, at least they can copyright their codes or something like that. Like I have invested in a couple of startups, and it becomes very difficult for me to guide them and tell them that, boss, you should invest in that, you should at least think on that. If you may not be able to patent your software in India, you may at least go outside and try doing that. At least, because what can happen in this global world, it's easy to raise funds from an external market rather than just in India. So the markets are pretty open. So if you have patents in another countries, it can really help you out, which allows you to, kind of work on also on your software. Now, the problem in India, what I've seen, and this is what the major problem I've seen both as an entrepreneur, as an investor, is the copycat mentality. Okay. And even after you have a copyright, or maybe you would have had a trademark, nobody knows how to really fight it out and what is the value of fighting it out. So I have some case studies with me. I'm not naming a particular company out here, but I know a legal case where it is one of my engineering batchmate, and he had a company which eventually was a real estate company, but there is some other company who came in with a similar name, which was the grocery company, the grocery selling company. It's a D2C market. And somehow there was a conflict around it. And eventually I know that that person has taken some money to transfer that name while keep doing his business with another name. So he continuously kept doing his business, but he changed the name and he transferred that name to that company. Now the point is, I really don't know whether he has approached them or they have approached him or things like that. But these are very rare cases. And this case study has also come into the legal journals, some of the places when I was doing my research on copywriting and trademarking and putting my patent. It's almost 3 years back. I'm talking about this case study. And there is one very famous case study which is quite available. It's openly known, is about Burger King. The Burger King is one of the major, brand in India. Not many people know that there is a US Burger King also, which came in India to run the operations. And the Indian Burger King, which is actually started by a Sardarji. And, eventually I was hearing his interview also some point in time. And he, the way it started happening is they have actually trademarked their name, and which eventually he won the case because that is his name. I really don't know who is running the operations today, but it seems to be a mix of both things. And there is definitely a lot of benefit which is it has gone to this particular person. But what I'm trying to tell you is these are very situational. So I'll tell you, let's say, you have designed a name. This was a Burger King or maybe some other name, which is by chance it has become that kind of a scenario that it is conflicting, and then they could do such kind of deals. But there are so many cases wherein what people do is they look at your copyright, they look at your concept, change the name, change the brand, and because of their money power, they actually overpower the entire market. And frankly speaking, nobody will be able to really figure that out, that it is actually the similar content which is getting copyrighted or being used also. They may not even copyright it, but they might use the same thing with a different name. So how do we protect these kind of things is very, very crucial and difficult as an investor for me to decide that, okay, tomorrow I might be investing a small amount with that startup. That startup may or may not be raising the fund at some point in time. But there can be a big player who can come into the market, use the same concept, redevelop the things with the money power, and overtakes the entire stuff. So ultimately, it's a loss of an entrepreneur as an investor as well. So this is my biggest of the challenge, especially when it comes to the legal rights which we have. So how do we really identify and keep a track on all these activities, what's happening, in different parts of India and across the globe? How do you protect that is my biggest worry. And that's what I think I would want to answer it. And it creates a problem both as an entrepreneur to raise funds when it comes to raising funds for my own business, also as an investor to invest in a company which definitely has a great advantage or great platform or a product or a technology developed. But I mean, I would not say technology, but using a different technology, they've created a good product. What How do they protect, how do we protect them? They may have funds as well, they're already got some investment, but it's difficult to protect that. And that's where we struggle, frankly speaking. That's what I think I would like to answer.
Thanks, Achal, for bringing up this point. I would say that you should associate with IP professionals like us to be in a
Okay.
position to help you with the startup parts. Now, most of these startups would have their own IP professionals or law firms associated with them who are helping them with the entire process. But most of the investors should also have their own setups which can check and ensure that whatever the startups are saying, one, is correct. Two,
Okay.
they actually have the right on the thing. Three, they are not infringing on anybody else's right. Now, if you have invested into a company which is infringing on somebody's IP, like you mentioned that somebody else infringes on their IP, but what if they are infringing unknowingly on somebody else's
Possibly.
IP? So
Possibly.
at the end of the day, you will also be held liable, right? Because you're investing into it. Um, it will give a bad reference for you that you have invested in a company which is infringing on somebody's IP. So you need to have professionals with you who can help you in doing an valuation or evaluation of the startup's IP and telling you whether it is worthwhile, if it is safe to invest. Now, the story of investment doesn't end by just investing, right? It is a complete journey along with the entrepreneur. So at each stage, you should have a framework that ensures that the startups give you the information over a period of time with respect to their IP. Most of the startups, they don't have an IP strategy or a budget for it. So those are the flag points for you. What are they actually planning to do? Are they IP savvy or not? If they are not, you can just connect them with people who can help them with that process. Obviously, you would not like to get into it, but then looking out for infringements is a continuous process. For a company that is growing, it may not be feasible to be on a continuous lookout to check for infringements. But as they are growing up and gaining a lot of recognitions and establishing themselves in the market, it becomes very, very important for them to screen, to monitor infringements. Now most of the larger companies have a cell or a unit within themselves to check for such infringements, and they generally don't come after companies which are low hanging fruits for them, because even if they file a suit, they are not going to get anything out of it unless and until they want to acquire that particular company or they have something else in their mind. So those are these units for those companies which keep screening on. So they can be a similar mechanism for the startups. They can have professionals who can screen or look out for infringements on their part and help them in dealing with it. In most of the cases, just sending a simple legal notice helps. The other person, if it's not a well established company or just an individual, they would back out. If it's a well established company, it's a chance for you. Try to talk to them. Maybe you can and get them on to the board as a licensee or a acquire for your company. So it could be a good opportunity even for the startup in such a scenario. But as you said, yes, there is no one fit all strategy. It depends upon the situation, what are the exact case details, what is the infringement level. So you will have to take the action according to the situation which is there.
But so I think, see, that is something very detailed discussion we might have to have. Uh, in fact, there are certain cases. So let's say I have got a patent on my logo, or I would not say a patent, I would say a trademark, which is my Bringle logo. But in that Bringle logo, I've already created it and written something called Skills Development Center. Now that's trademark registered in Indian government, by Indian patent law. What are the rights I have with respect to the word called Skills Development Center? Do I have some rights on those three words, or do I don't have? Because a lot of people are using the same word like Skills Development Center and things like that. But Government of India has given me as a trademark on that. I'm using this as only as a case study to understand, so that people can understand, whoever is are hearing this, they will also get a perspective that, is it, when you get a trademark, what all is covered in that?
Sure. So when you get a registered trademark, you have the right to go and prohibit others from using the same trademarked logo, tag name, or any phrase that you are using. So now, but before you go and enforce it against anybody else, you need to check, is it registered? Is it is it still valid? Because even if you have a registered trademark and you are not using it, it can still be it won't be easy to enforce it. The third thing is, where and which class is it protected in? So if you have some infringer in some other country, you can't go and enforce your trademarked phrase, logo, or a tagline which is protected in India, say in any other country. So wherever the IP is filed, it is only enforceable there. Second, it has to be valid, granted. to be in a position to enforce. So you need to first check out all these pointers if they're there, and then you do have the right to go and enforce it. But for most startups, I do advise them that, see how big is the catch. Is it worthwhile going and investing the money? If you feel it's just just an individual, you can just send them a legal notice to kind of tell them that this is something protected. um, if it is a bigger company, then you'll have to change your strategy definitely, because they will have a larger group of lawyers to deal with it. So you'll have to come
Right.
out with a strategy to deal with that. So again, there is no one fit all strategy to deal in such a situation. But yes, you do have the right to fight for it and ensure that nobody else uses it.
That is something amazing. I mean, frankly, Pooja, I would really want to connect with you offline on this particular part because, I'm sure there could be a lot of many people like that who are kind of put up and got the trademarks registered in their name with certain taglines and something like that. And I've been kind of apparently been into trademarking and copywriting my content for the last 6 7 years. Since the time I've started my entrepreneurship journey, somehow I've got started with my low trade. When I didn't used to have money even to run my business, I used to spend a small amount of money in getting a trademark done, at least on my logo. I mean, there are few companies whom I'm not even using it. I mean, that I'm not even using that logo or the name, but the taglines still remain intact. So the taglines are of course protected. And as you know that some of those names are very common names, and even though it is granted or registered by the government of India, how we can really approach to it, as you rightly said, large company, and it could be even government to that extent, that government myself themselves might be using similar sort of taglines or words or similar kind of logos as well. So how would you kind of reach out to them? I think that's going to be a very strategical decision or discussion which we somebody has to take. So I think I would really want to discuss with you that how we can take this your help for our invested startups as well as some of our portfolio startups where we are mentoring them and of some of our companies. So we'll have a separate discussion on that. But I think it's very interesting conversation. Now let me just ask a couple of more questions from you. Uh, Now you have said that you are into a technology transfer area. So what kind of a tools does a technology transfer office needs? Or what kind of a is there any kind of a replacement to the existing tools which you suggest to them?
So, Anshav, for a tech transfer office, the most important resource is their team, is the team of the professionals. Because unless and
Okay.
until you have professionals in your team, you won't be in a position to help internal and external clients. So,
Mhm.
internal clients means the team, the entire team within themselves are clients for each other, because each of them are expert in one or other domain, and you need to support each other to be in a position to support an external client. So team is the most important crucial resource for any tech transfer office. Other than that, you need to have access to databases. um, if you are doing any of the analytics, like you mentioned the trademark part, you need to have access to databases to look for it, ensure that you are getting the right information. Most of the databases are paid, but then there are free databases as well. Most of the trademark or the patent databases of all the patent offices or trademark offices are free to use. They are not on a paid basis, so you can easily do a search. Even though it is cumbersome doing the search on each and every patent office website to see if there's any similar patent on it or any trademark which is already being filed, that is a bit of a challenge. But yes, you can either go in for paid tools, or you can opt for such non paid free tools to use for yourself. So there are also requirement for having market research tools. You need to have access to databases which will give you the market insights. When you're doing a technology transfer, you need to know the market, right? Based on the market, you can identify the players, the competition, how to deal with a particular jurisdiction or particular geography, because each geography will have different aspects connected to it. It may have a smoother regulatory pathway for you if it's a life science or any regulated technology. If they don't have a clear cut pathway, it will be very difficult for you to license it out or even start a company there. So all these factors you can, or all this information you can only gather when you have access to relevant databases. You also need access to journals, because when you are working in a tech transfer office, you need to keep yourself abreast of what are the current technology trends. Otherwise, how are you going to advise a client on whether their technology is going to make it or break it? So you need to definitely know the technology trends, um, to be in a position to comment on the commercial potential of a particular technology. So every tool are generally paid, but yes, you can find alternatives as well for such tools.
Okay. Now, I think for the betterment or for the benefit of our viewers, uh, what is technology transfer office? If you could just explain that in a little bit in more detail, I think it will be more clear for them, because it's a little jargon as far as startups are concerned. They don't even understand legal terminology. And now there is something called technology transfer is coming. So what is a technology transfer office?
Technology transfer office is the heart of the organizations. So far, most of the tech transfer offices have been linked or connected with universities, academic institutions, to help them in protecting or managing their innovations and commercializing them. But now, if you look at ITTO, which is the organization I'm heading, Innovation Technology Transfer Office, it is a uniquely conceptualized unit which is not just dealing with academic institutions, it is also dealing with innovators, startups, other companies. So it is giving the essential support to innovators. When I say innovators, it includes all the stakeholders, companies, or startups, or academic researchers as well. So we assist innovators in identifying what is protectable, because most of the time people don't know whether it is to be patented or whether it is to be trademarked, or what is the correct jargon to be used, um, and how it is to be protected. Who all will be the inventors? Who can be the applicant for it? Now, who are inventors? Inventors are those who have either created or reduced it to practice. Who are applicants? Applicants could be in loop because of the policy framework which is there. They have contributed by giving you the necessary resources, or you are employed with them, you have signed an agreement which says that all and everything, every work that you do would belong to them. Or it could be a work for hire situation where you're not been paid by that particular company, and all the IP would belong to them, so they are the applicants. So now all these things, when you sit down to help a particular innovator and any professional that is doing it, either it can be standalone professional who is helping it, or it could be a law firm. But then both an individual professional and a law firm have limitations. They don't have access to the technology related aspect, while a tech transfer office will have connections at both ends, both the legal and the technology aspect. So a tech transfer office, in my definition, is something which is connecting or bridging both the things.
Wow. So basically what you're saying is, you as a technology transfer office, you won't even help businesses or individuals to identify that what technology or what product can be patented and in any form, and also help them build that technology for that patent and eventually get them a better, workable patent, rather than just filing a patent and then not doing anything about it. Am I correct?
Yes, so what happens is that when we do an assessment of any of the inventions, we do help them in knowing what all is already patented, so they don't have to rework on or recreating the wheel. So that is one thing that we do. We also help in strengthening their patent. Now, when you as an innovator or an inventor are looking at a particular problem, you would be thinking about it from one particular aspect. We could bring in more aspects to it based on our search. When we do a patent search or a landscape search, we come to know what is there, what are the gray areas, what are the areas which you can work on and maybe solve the problem, and then have a unique product or process conceptualized or worked out. So we help in that as well. Now, most of the technologies die off because they are at a very early stage and they cannot be marketed or commercialized or transferred to any other entity. So to be in a position to scale it up, to bring it in a position that it's marketable, you need to develop it further. For that, you may need partners, you may need facilities, you may need funding as well. So
Absolutely.
all these three important tools or inputs that are required for the output, which is the developed technology, we do help them. So you have captured it right. We do help them in making patents which are not just patents filed for the heck of it, but workable
Absolutely.
technologies.
Wow. And also the funding part.
Also the funding part.
Wow. So, which are those universities or institutions you are already working with, and how from this technology transfer office perspective? Because I have not seen such kind of offices even in many of the good universities. I'm not naming them because some of my invested startups have got incubated in those universities. But when I see to them, they really have no idea about this something. I mean, they will bring somebody who's an IP expert. They may give a lecture or something like that, but they don't have a literally a support system to really identify what can be patented, develop that as a technology, and eventually get them funding as well. So, what are the universities or places you are already working with in India and or abroad if you are working with anybody?
So right now our focus, Anshul, is on India completely. We
Mhm.
were set up in March 2020, so we are quite young, and I call ITDO as a startup because we are in the starting up mode, trying to reach out and connect with more innovators. We are working with institutions like IIT Jammu, IIT Indore, Central University of Bhatinda, Punjab, Bhatinda. We are also working with a unique program, which is the innovation hubs, create technology innovation hubs created by Government of India. It's at IIT Ropar, the Awadh program, which is there. They are into agricultural technologies, clean tech and agricultural technologies. So we are helping all of these to protect their inventions and also in transferring them. So as a tech transfer partner, we are helping them. Now coming to the point that you made about, most universities not having them. They may have an IP cell which is catering only to the university, but not to the startups and incubators. So that is what makes us different because we are not limited to one particular university. We are catering to most of the universities. We are open to working with any of the universities. We also work with incubators and startups. So that is the key difference or key differentiator for us that, across the globe, the tech transfer offices are generally associated with one university or academic institution, and they only help the academic institutions. They would not cater to any other client. They may out of goodwill and as per the mandate, but our mandate is bigger. We have not kept it restricted to any one particular stakeholder. We have tried to cover the entire chain of stakeholders to ensure that we contribute to the ecosystem.
That's something great. And so you also mentioned about incubators. So do you and what I know is that Government of India, and you mentioned about Invest India, Startup India, DIPP, which are very music to my ears because not many startups even today knows about them. And there was a time when I was trying to reach out to Invest India organization and working with them. So I'm aware about, but of course my knowledge is also very very limited. Uh, so what I wanted to know is that I mean, the Startup India or Invest India, they do have some small funds for incubators as well to invest as a seed fund to these startups. Do you also help these incubators to align with those kind of institutions, get those seed fund available for them? It could be a private incubators, it could be a university incubator, Would you help them as well, as part of this technology transfer office?
So that is currently not part of our mandate, but since we are part of Foundation for Innovation and Technology Transfer, they do have a mandate of helping the incubators. We at FIT, they are managing 3 incubators. So they do share their experience about getting the fundings. Also, they have a network of supporting the incubators. So if there are any incubators who are looking out for help, or any universities who want to set up their own incubators, so fit is the place. They definitely help. My colleague Dr. Ashutosh helps with this entire process, so I'll be happy to connect anyone whoever needs help. The funding part that we help with is more with connecting partners like you, who would be maybe interested in their technology, work with them in creating their pitch decks, um, giving them the relevant IP perspective to their pitch deck, because they have already worked on their pitch deck. There
Right.
could be a component of IP which is missing in it. So we usually help with that.
Okay, great. I think I would definitely want to connect with your colleague because Design Your Unicorn is also kind of an incubator platform, because we don't just leave a startup. It's a proprietary methodology, a 5-stage proprietary methodology, which helps to design, a sustainable, adaptable, and scalable business model. We call it as digitize and monetize transform their ideas into $1 billion recurring income business model. So I think there would be a lot of areas where these startups would be requiring help. And to the way we can help these businesses is to get them initial set of small fund, even if it is a small fund of 5 lakh rupees, 10 lakh rupees as a seed fund, which can be reached out to them. See, I've seen that a lot of universities have these grants available from the government, but unfortunately, these startups complete their incubation program, but they never receive the funding, and it's a very, very unfortunate part. Now, because of that, the entire effort which a startup has put in has gone waste. Second, the coordinators who are there, they are happy because they've done their job, they've got their salaries, but the startups have actually not got benefited out there. And as I said, they're only focusing on giving up a lecture or a discussion like a typical university model or academic model, and then it is left onto the entrepreneur. The difference between a typical normal incubator and a Design Your Unicorn methodology, that is a step-by-step process, that you have to do this first, then you will do this second and third. And that's where we kind of collaborate and work with partners like you and keep identifying such partners who could create different and unique value for them. Because if we know that IP is one of the important area for us, and there are around 4 areas, 7 pillars, and 105 factors where we focus upon. IP is one of the important factor out there. Now, if they don't consider that, I think one time or the other, they will find some challenges, or they may not be able to scale that much as they could get benefited out of it. So I think I would really want to connect with your colleague and talk about it more. We are not a university incubator, but yeah, we are working on a similar format, but with our own methodology, and bringing in experience from 2000 plus leaders, of successful leaders who have made success into the business world of their own. And of course, that is one of the reason we are kind of now interviewing people like you to bring in more and more expertise out there in the market for the benefit of startups. Okay, so thank you so much, Pooja, for this lovely conversation. I'll not take too much of more time now. Okay, so now couple of more professional questions before I jump into a personal fun questions out here. So how do you ensure the confidentiality, which, during the conversation when you discuss it with a particular startup or an individual, and how do you kind of help them and protect them from any other external attacks or risk which they could face during the course of filing an IP?
So our process is that, even before we start any conversation with any of the innovators, we sign a non-disclosure agreement with them. So we have a two-way protection, I would say. One is that we sign individual non-disclosure agreements with the clients, and all of the team members at ITTO also have signed, agreements with such clauses with ITTO. So even I and Dr. Wali, who is the managing director at FIN, all of us have signed non-disclosure agreements and specific engagement agreements, which ensure that, which bind us in keeping all the conversation and information confidential. Uh, Second, once we start kind of, discussing it with the innovator, we also tell them that, don't give us the confidential information right in the first beginning, meeting. Ensure that you are sharing it once we have signed such agreements. Also, don't share it with anybody else, not just with us, but with any other person. Even if you're not working with us, if you, go ahead and work with some other professional, please ensure that you at least sign agreements with them before you hand over your confidential work to them. The other thing is that most of the document exchanges that take place over email are password protected, and the password is only known to the person who's handling that particular case. So if one of my team members is taking care of it, only she or he will have the password. I don't have the access to it, even though I am marked on the email, just for the record and information purpose. Because sometimes what happens is that if a particular team member is not there, at least I can take care of that particular case, or I know the status of it. So most of the documents that are shared would be password protected. So these are the way that we, ensure that we maintain the confidentiality. And the names of the clients also that I have mentioned, we have already taken permission from them that, we can name them wherever we talk about ITTO and the services that we give.
That's good. That's great. In fact, this password protection is a very simple feature, but it's actually, and I remember in my corporate experience, we used to use this, always have documents your password protected. But somehow, when we work in our own business, we tend to forget this because we are into too many things. But I think small aspects can make it really, really, I think it's going to be really beneficial because it can protect and it will reach out to only to those people who really wants
Need
whom
to
you
know.
want to take that up. Okay,
Yeah.
so thanks for that. And I think one more question I would want to ask to you is that is there any kind of a technology you have also adopted or learned during this period of time? Maybe a start of your career or now, and what is the kind of technology transfer work which as a role which you have played during the pandemic part of it?
So technologies have always been the main part of technology transfer, because without the technologies, I can't transfer anything. So over the years, yes, I have been in touch with innovators who have created technologies which are quite unique. So as a professional, IP professional, you do get access to these technology information and you learn from them. I'm a biotechnologist, so I was also pursuing my PhD in governance of nanomedicine. So over the period of time, I did learn more and more about nanomedicine, because unless and until you know a technology, you can't create a governance framework for it. So, so yes, I have learned about technology and I enjoy, going through the technology details and learning about them. Um, Especially during this pandemic, what we have seen that, technology transfer became essential because most of the technologies were lying with the institutes or innovators, which were maybe created for some other purpose, and suddenly they could find a use during this COVID time. They were, so, become a COVID solution, like sanitizers or, compounds that are antiviral. They could be used in different forms: lotions, sanitizers, or hand washes even. So such kind of technologies, we were in a position to transfer them. I would give you an example of a recent tech transfer that we have done, which is on air purification system. They have, it was a normal air purification system where they have now added on a lot of features to help people with asthma, to screen out, most of the dust and the pollens. And they also are taking care of the COVID part. So it is two-in-one solution. They are still working on it. The technology has been licensed out to a company, and they are working on it to develop it further and bring it to the market. So this is part of our COVID initiative Sarthi, through which we got this technology transfer done. Other than the COVID solutions, through this initiative, we are also working with the institutes to see if they would like to partner with startups. Initially, when this pandemic came up in March in 2020, they were right after March. I don't remember the exact months. There was a time when there was a lot of funding being given by the government of India, and at that time, we, either the academic institutions or the startups were actually looking for partners to become collaborators for such grants. So we had helped them in looking for such partners as well. So yes, technology transfer could have many forms, just not simply transfer a technology which is already developed, but also such through such collaborations, you can bring in a component of technology development and transfer. Because even after getting the grant from government of India, what are you going to do about the technology, right? Y-
Absolutely.
The institutes can't take it forward. It is not their mandate to do it. They can't, start selling it. So you definitely need a company. So a collaborative project between an academic institution and a startup is a best example that I can think of where pandemic or COVID has definitely helped them in bringing out technologies to solve this problem.
Okay, great, great. So you also mentioned about investors, and I'm coming back to that. There are a lot of times when these entrepreneurs ask for NDA submission, and there was a time when I was also asking, for NDA submissions because I was working on a patented product. I filed a patent and was waiting for the patent approval. Uh, Now the problem here is that investors at the first point itself, they will want to see an idea what it is all about, and they would not like to sign an NDA before even sharing something. And on the other side, entrepreneur is always in a hassled mode that okay, they should receive a funding so that they can move ahead with that. How do you kind of help, what do you suggest to these startups, or how you can help these kind of startups so that the investors also does not feel, or their egos does not get touched upon, that okay, why are you asking for an NDA, don't you trust us and all. While there are people like that, but I'm not denying that. So how can we protect both of their interest and their self-respect out there, I would call that, rather than an ego, into this situation, and how can we handle that better?
I think the better way would be, that the startups, even before discussing any of the ideas with any of the investors, they should at least file an provisional patent application if it's protectable under the patent law.
Okay.
So for that, they need to backstrap, right? They have to kind of get to the professional to get that help to see if it's actually patentable. Start that process early on. This is another mistake that we see quite often, that most of these startups wait for a right time. There is no don't have to wait for a right time, because over the process you are losing so much of your time. Somebody else would come up with it and they might have filed an application, and you
True.
will lose out on it. So you first have to file an application on it, ensure that it's at least whatever you're going to discuss is protected, it's been taken care of. And when you're discussing with the investor, you don't need to give him the technical details, right? He won't be interested in it. He would be interested in knowing what is it that you are going to do, what difference it is going to bring, what are the advantages, what are the USP. Now, uh, let me give you a very simple example of a phone, right? If phone was something new that I had created and I had to seek funds from you, I won't tell you how does it exactly work, what is the technology that I have brought in. I would rather sell you the product as what are the advantages. It is, going to help you in communication, help you in making networks, keep you connected with your loved ones or with your team. Um, and it is low cost, and all such kind of benefits is what I'm going to showcase to the investor. The main crux of the technology, how, what is it, can be discussed later on. Once you have had the first set of meetings with the investors, you can then tell them that See, now we have had this first level of discussion. For any further discussion, let's sign an NDA. And I'm sure every investor would respect that because they have crossed the first level. Most of them do have apprehensions because they don't know what is it that you're going to discuss. But once you have crossed that first level, they would be willing to sign. And nowadays, most of the investors, they are quite savvy. They would themselves offer you or ask you this question: is this protected or not? If not, let's sign an NDA. At least whichever investor I have met, they definitely say this. So I hope that slowly and slowly all of the investors get into that mode, that attitude is adopted. But yes, as a startup, as an entrepreneur to start off with, even if you are going and discussing anywhere, don't give out the main crux of your idea or your invention in the first meeting.
Yeah, and I think it's very difficult to really figure it out. Sometimes it could be very tricky that how exactly you're going to do, because they will ask for a patent, number or something like that, and they can easily fetch that out, frankly speaking. So it becomes really challenging. And I think that's where even I am confused when I talk to investors or create pitch decks. So I think it's going to be very, very important for every startup or an entrepreneur to consult an IP office. And Pooja, I would really want to work with you for both of my invested startups, as well as for the incubation program or the designer unicorn program, which we are working, and of course for my own startup as well. So we'll definitely work on that area. I think we will have I'm really loving this conversation and missed out a complete time out here. Sorry, I won't take too much of time. So now from here, I have some more of a fun questions, which I would like to ask. So Pooja, I mean, this is a little personal to you. So if you would want to go on a dinner date with three people, dead or alive, who would be those three people and why?
Well, the first one would be my husband, because nowadays we get less of time to spend together. Both of us are working and we have a little child. So I would definitely like to go out with him first.
Wow.
Uh, the second would be, I would like to go out with Mahatma Gandhi to see how did he cultivate that patience, um, how did he get to cultivate so many good attributes that he has. That is one thing I would like to learn from him. The
Mhm.
third would be to go out with, let me think about who would be the third person, because that is going to be very crucial, right? um I think any young entrepreneur, maybe you, we can go out for a dinner date to see. Uh, we have a lot of interesting conversation going on, and we have a lot of common points to discuss. So yes, these would be the three choices.
Wow, wow, you've covered quite a side of it, quite a, very uniquely you've answered this. I've not got such kind of replies from anybody till now, believe me. I mean, the one you have taken care of your family or a personal life, you've taken care of a leadership style or a leader, perspective, and you've also, taken care of a young entrepreneur or the person who is kind of where you are supporting them, basically is your customer, you can say that. Beautiful, wonderful, Pooja. I think this is the best answer I've gotten for this question. Mahatma Gandhi is the of course is the name which has come in the second time in my interviews, and that's only in last 8 to 10 interviews I'm talking about, not so many earlier of them. So it's a quite a good thing. Uh, okay, so the second question is, if you could turn back and you happen to become a 18-year-old Pooja, what would you like to advise to 18-year-old Pooja of yours?
Don't get into science and start thinking about PhD. Think about
Okay.
entrepreneurship. There are a lot of opportunities.
Wow.
Go and find yourself, I would say. So if I had that chance, I would, definitely start a startup. uh, if I had that chance, again, I would like to do that. Right now, I am running ITTO, so I feel that excitement and happiness when I see how my ideas are being creating changes. bringing in a change in the ecosystem. So yes, if I can go back, I would definitely like to become an entrepreneur.
Wow, that's lovely. So that's really great. Uh, okay, now one last message to entrepreneurs or the startups you would like to give it to them as a parting message.
I like to tell them that please do your homework. Try to look, search, check if there's something already out there. Don't reinvent the wheel. Whatever you are working on, please ensure that you are protecting it on right time. Don't wait for that you will do it later. Have a budget for it. IP is not a less expensive thing. You need to have money to protect it, maintain it, and enforce it. So do keep IP component as well as part of your budget. Protect it. Don't lose it out. That is your hard work, something you have created. It's your baby, so please protect it and ensure that you can enforce it anytime and bring in a value for your own startup. That's the message from my side.
Great. I think perfect for this interview. And Pooja, I have learned so much from this interview of yours. And believe me, I'm sure a lot of people who will listen to this interview will also learn a lot. And I'm just hoping that all the entrepreneurs and even the investors understand this importance, because it's not only about making money out of it. It's about you're creating a value. You're creating a value which is going to be very different than what anybody has thought over. There could be a process, there could be a system, there could be a technology, there could be a content, there could be the approach what you take, there could be many more things which are different in you. So don't think that unless you have a product created or something which you have only as a very hardware linked things, things on that, and you don't protect your expertise. You can protect your expertise in various ways. Copyrights are there, trademarks are there, patents are there, and of course you have people like Pooja who are really supporting in building that up into a technology piece, maybe eventually a patent. Now, even if it requires a hardware, there could be a simple component of hardware which can be attached, and overall thing can be patented out there. So I think there are various ways around it, but do keep up a budget and perspective towards an IP part of it, because whatever you are working, it may be 2%, 3%, 5%, 7%, 10%, depending on what is your capability right now. But you should definitely keep a small budget in your financial models to working on your IPs part of it, and do it as early as you starting your own company. Maybe start with a logo trademarking. That itself could be a very unique idea, because your logo itself could fetch you certain important registrations or control over the market. So that could give you a lot of weightage with respect to the investors, also to the customers as well, the trust within the customers, that you really care about your company, you care about your process, you have something unique around that. So with this, I would like to thank Pooja once again. And thank you so much, Pooja, for coming in here and supporting India to become a self-sustainable economy. I am sure this is the only way by which we can generate more and more quality in intellectual property for our country. And we will be able to, with this new technologies coming up, new patents coming up, it will be very easy for us to become a financial independent company and independent country per se. So with this, thank you so much. And for the viewers, keep bringing, keep growing.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.